So I've been talking about being more resilient, particularly more resilient in each individual area of your life, so it does not become a domino that then starts to fall over and add stress to every other area of your life. And today I am focusing on how to increase your physical well-being and resilience. And this is something I do with a lot of my clients, is make sure they have some health routine that helps them be more resilient so that they can meet the challenges and stresses of business. By the way, I am Alec from Easier Habits, and I coach overthinking entrepreneurs in how to turn their anxiety and overwhelm into unstoppable execution. So there's really three areas of your physical well-being to focus on. There's getting enough sleep, there's getting exercise, and there's eating well. And actually, Tom, I forget how to pronounce his last name, Tom Bilio, I think he said for him in that order is the most important. Now, the interesting thing about sleep is, like, yes, it affects like tiredness and your mental attitude if you're grumpy in the morning, etc. But it has all sorts of things, like not getting enough sleep could result in weight gain because of how your body does or does not digest things when it's more tired, etc., or because of it tends to increase stress, which messes with your metabolism. So, some of the things, for instance, like if you're having a hard time losing weight and you're not sleeping enough, possibly the number one thing you can do to make that easier for you is get more sleep. So that will help both with your willpower to exercise, as well as literally help your body digest better without even changing what you eat. So sleep is a very powerful way to improve your life mentally, physically, etc. And that will bleed out into all areas of your life, your relationships. You'll be calmer, have more positive energy in your relationships. You'll also bring that additional focus into your work. Sleep itself, we can break it down into two areas. There's just purely getting more sleep, and there is getting more quality of sleep. People attack it from different angles. My favorite is not to have a bedtime of when I go to sleep, but for instance, to set a sign-off time from the computer. And I don't do this constantly, but weeks where I realize like I'm not getting enough sleep, I need more sleep, I will kind of readjust by calibrating something like by 9:45, I am plugged out from the computer, and I'll still do things around, like, I'll play with the cat a little bit, I'll read a little bit, etc. Usually don't go straight to bed, and that's actually really helpful for quality of sleep, which we'll get to later, but that helps me. Other people talk about, like, don't focus on going to bed at a particular time, focus on waking up at a particular time. I have small kids that need to get to school, so that kind of happens anyway. Or a cat that will wake me up if I sleep in because I'm not letting him outside also happens. So that's a different way, a couple different ways to think about getting more sleep rather than just setting a bedtime. Try those out if setting an earlier bedtime is difficult for you. Another thing you could do is, if you like to read, put a good book by your nightstand, or give yourself some other reason to be excited to shift from a work mode or a play mode into a rest mode. So that's another way you could think about helping yourself get more sleep. Now, quality of sleep is also helpful, and some of the key components are having a low temperature in your room. They are having more darkness in your room, so shut off all of those blinking lights or other things that potentially have lights, get dark curtains. Another thing is, staying away from screens. So having a break between computer time and screen time is helpful. I have found at certain points in my life that particularly actually doing a small walk around the block or something like that after screen time, before bedtime, does help me settle. And I think there's a little bit of research in that too, that like as you walk, you don't want to do heavy exercise, but as you walk, you probably will wake up a little bit during the duration of that walk, but that, like, for some reason, human beings are biologically wired to like have kind of a last burst of energy before going to sleep, and the walk can kind of get that out rather than people laying down. If you go straight to bed and lay down and then you have that burst of energy in bed, it can be hard to sleep. So that might be one of the reasons why it's harder for you to get to sleep and have good quality of sleep. And the last thing in terms of quality of sleep is not eating an hour or two before bed, not having any big meals a couple hours before bed. But if you not eat anything, that's great. And then, you have to figure out for you in terms of water consumption, what works for you and what doesn't in terms of your schedule. So those are all ways that you can increase the quality of your sleep. So the other area of improving your physical well-being would be exercise. And this really is like, do what works for you. Eventually you want to get to a place where you're challenging yourself, but if you're just starting out, you really want to focus on something that you enjoy doing. And to be honest, what works for me right now, kind of niche, is VR boxing. And that is something that I used over the summer, particularly when there was high stress. My wife had a spine surgery, and that did affect all areas of my life. One of the ways I maintained my energy to keep up with the household chores, the business, and the kids was by having this routine of exercise that, got me going in the morning, certainly, but because it's, depending on like 16 minutes of intense exercise, and my body's like still adjusting for more than 10 minutes after that. So it's like the more than the 20 minutes of recommended aerobic exercise to increase your energy. So that is one thing that really worked for me, but let me give you a couple other ideas or tips. Of course, there's all sorts of things you could do, including swimming, but I am not, which is, I guess, I know that is low impact. So if you have joint issues, etc., that could be a good thing. The other thing that I have heard that's interesting, particularly around jogging, is there's something about jogging and kind of the visual rhythm, etc., that helps your mind take a rest and can be great for refocusing. So, depending on how you use that, and of course you can use it first thing in the morning to wake up and get sunlight. That could be another benefit of jogging, or you could position it later in your day when you feel like your focus is running down, to kind of rest your brain and re-get that focus. So jogging can be really powerful. You could do, let's see, yoga is an interesting one. It's not going to give you that aerobic exercise, but it will give you some stretching that you don't get from other things. And it can be very meditative. So it can combine, if you're really doing it mindfully and breathing relaxed while you do it, it can be a moving meditation, which for some people is really powerful. I actually often do some yoga after my VR boxing, just because I like the feeling of looseness and not being tight. It, for me, also helps prevent back issues or counteract some back issues that I might get from hunching over the computer all day. So, and I always have a fondness in my heart for yoga because it also is one of the, as gentle exercise, one of the things you can do to reduce your allergies, which as a kid, I had tons of allergies. My nose was so clogged that I am a consummate mouth breather, and it wasn't until I learned yoga, Wim Hof breathing, etc., that I cleared my sinuses, that I actually learned how to breathe through my nose. So I have a soft spot for yoga. And then lastly, another thing that that might help some of you in terms of exercise, especially if you're interested more in the gaining muscle or just lean muscle even. They can be the most efficient way to do this. Now, this comes from a book called Body by Science, and it basically says the most impactful way you can use your time in exercising to get the most out of it and reduce injury the most is do a set of a slow exercise, continuous motion, no rests at any point in it, for 45 to 90 seconds. And you want to calibrate your exercise to something that is tiring enough that you literally cannot do another one, and that hits sometime between the 45 and 90 seconds range. And so you do want to find something that does challenge you. But the amazing thing about this is if you find, for instance, a pushing and pulling exercise for your upper body and some abs, and do some leg exercises, even if you're doing a minute a pop, you can get a pretty good workout in under 10 minutes that will still leave you pleasantly sore the next day, i.e. you are building muscle, you're challenging yourself, you're growing, but depending on how close your gym is, that might be less time than it takes you just to get to the gym, let alone do exercises there and come back. In my experience, if you're just doing like body weight exercises at home, it's a little bit harder to get quite the workout in as you would otherwise, but it is much, much, much more efficient for me than going to gym, and I end up doing that a lot more than going to the gym. And one of the reasons why this works is this is optimal for putting your muscles into recovery, and more so than actually doing physical exercise, it's like the recovery of muscles and etc. that burns a lot of calories very frequently. So this is not just for building muscle, although it can help you build some muscle. It's not going to turn you into like a bulky weightlifter, but it can also be helpful for kind of maintaining a lean physique if that's what you're interested in. And it's just a really efficient form of exercise. The authors of that note that although a lot of people push aerobic exercise, you can question the actual impact of aerobic exercise. For instance, that doesn't seem to transfer between two different exercises. So like if you are a cyclist and you start swimming, you will find that you are out of breath very quickly, etc. And so kind of what they note is like actually what, one of the things that seems to have the biggest impact on your general fitness is, your muscle conditioning for a particular activity. So that's probably more than you needed to know about exercise. But again, like those are a few ideas. Try one, pick one. Start with something that is enjoyable or exciting to you. If like the most efficient muscle workout possible is exciting for you, jump into that. But like if getting outside and jogging is more exciting to you, do that. Whatever it is, it will have a benefit if you do it regularly and it is exercise. And so just like take the next step. And then as you can do that consistently, you can challenge yourself more. Now, lastly, food, there's really two levers of eating, which is the quality of the stuff you eat and how much stuff you eat. And so I do intermittent fasting, so that's cutting down on the time I have to eat, which helps me cut down on the amount I have to eat. And for me, that's easier. All I have to do is keep busy when I'm at my period during the day when I'm not eating. And then naturally, for instance, I get to a point where I am hungry, which I remember as like a coder in California where they always had kitchens with snacks. Like I could be eating junk food. I didn't eat it all day, but I could be snacking all day, including junk food. And, whenever I ran into a hard mental problem, I was trying to just get a quick shot of blood sugar to increase my, focus and willpower, which actually is something, it is a hack you can use if you're having a hard time with focus and willpower. Actually increasing your blood sugar can help you in the moment. But what I had found, and this is I was doing this just naturally before realizing this is what I was doing, is when I ran into hard coding problems, I would hit, several times throughout the day, be like, eating a relatively quick, short source of sugar. It wasn't like I was eating like chocolate bars all day, but I might eat one of them and some other stuff. I was just munching, even healthy stuff, just constantly munching. And I think over time, constantly relying on that strategy put me in a place where one, I was gaining weight, and two, I was getting diminishing returns from it. And so coming to a place of intermittent fasting helped me. Intermittent fasting helped me not eat late at night and have that snacks. Like if I was stressed or still thinking about a problem at work, again, I had that habit of like, all right, high mental load, must eat. And I do that before right up until bedtime or half an hour before bedtime. And that was reducing the quality of my sleeping. So these things are all interconnected. You kind of have to find out where your pain point is and what's going to have the most impact for you. Try out different things, see what works. So that was the intermittent fasting side of it. Other than that, what you can do in terms of quality, obviously like cut out sugars and junk food. A lot of people don't drink enough water. So if you drink more water, chances are you'll actually feel less hungry during the day and need to eat less junk food. You'll also feel more mentally alert. Again, that's kind of another thing. Like that was my trigger. I felt like I needed more, brain RPMs or whatever that is. And then, I go to junk food. Whereas if I'm making sure I'm drinking water throughout the day, I feel less tired. I have less brain fog, etc. So, upping the amount of water that you intake. And of course, like fresh fruits and veggies are huge, good proteins, etc. And really what I've found for me, the biggest impact is in reducing carbs. I don't eat a ton of junk food, but I will go through wheat tortillas or cereal, actually, which is kind of like junk food a lot of times. I don't get the worst cereals, but it's still, not a great source of carbs. So often, if I'm stressed and thinking really hard, my instinct is to go for those cereals. But probably, and this is just for me, like from experimentation over time, like trying out intermittent fasting, trying these foods out, cutting those foods out, etc. For me, the happiest I am, and this is not something I do all the time. I admit I am not perfect, but I do pieces of it like intermittent fasting regularly. But like the happiest I am, food wise and energy wise, is a longer intermittent fasting, 18 to 20 hours instead of like 16. And I started with just like 12 hours, which is like no late night eating and not first thing when I got up. And then, slowly came more over time. And so pretty easily I can hit 16 hours. But when I'm really particular about hitting 18 to 20 hours, especially 20 hours regularly, I tend to eat less. And especially that period in the afternoon, I'm relying less on carbs to get me through the afternoon slump. And I actually find if I do that consistently and I'm eating good foods for, dinner, a little bit late afternoon, etc., then I actually don't have that slump as bad. I have more general energy. And then, of course, drinking water throughout that, and then cutting out the carbs specifically. And one of the reasons why that might be a thing for me too is I'm allergic to grasses, which technically includes wheat. And so if you're eating something that you're even mildly allergic to, it's not like a huge allergic reaction, but it still can cause inflammation in your gut down there. Again, can cause issues. And so I notice that when I cut out carbs dramatically, meaning like I'll have some noodles or, whatever with dinner and that's about it, that generally speaking, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling less bloaty in my intestines, having more energy, less afternoon slump, etc. So that is a few examples of experiments you can run with intermittent fasting, increasing your water intake, cutting out something, junk food, especially if you have a lot of it. I try not to buy it because I know I will consume it. But even then, like, heavily processed carbs, like, most breads, etc., especially at the snack time thing, cutting that out. So those are all different experiments you could run. I recommend try one thing at a time to see what matters the most for you. For a lot of people, that might just be drinking water. So what I do for that, by the way, is I have this water bottle here. And I try and drain the 3 24-ounce water bottles. That comes pretty close to half my body weight in ounces. Not exactly, but that seems to do the trick. I'm not perfect on that every day, but I can usually at least hit 2.5, and doing that regularly definitely has a positive impact on my energy. And for me, I guess that's probably like the first thing that I would do, then the second, intermittent fasting, and then the third is kind of removing. I tend to like to eat a fair amount of veggies. I usually have to exercise a little bit of willpower to eat more veggies. Fruit comes easy for me. Love fruit. Love protein. So yeah, like upping veggies a little bit and cutting out carbs, or essentially actually replacing carbs with veggies, for me, would be in the next piece of impact. So there you have it. Those are all sorts of experiments you can run, that you can run with sleep, with exercise, with diet. Pick one at a time, cycle through until you find the thing that's most impactful for you. If you've had a hard time making a change in the past, chances are it's not you, it's just a habit that didn't really pay off. Once you find the habits that really do pay off for you, like the VR boxing, for example, it's easy to stick to that. I enjoy it. It adds a lot of energy to my day. I would be a lot sleepier right now. I'm filming this relatively early in the morning, and I would still be like waking up, getting at it if I hadn't done my VR boxing this morning. So you'll find the things that work for you, and sometimes that changes. You have to swap out habits. So I have had times where I did the jogging instead of that, and there are benefits to that, different benefits, and sometimes benefits that I need, maybe more, than the intense workout, right? The getting outside, getting sunlight early in the morning, etc. So you are a living, breathing organism. Your habits will evolve with you, but I guarantee that probably in each of these areas, there's like one thing that will have an outsized return. So for me, the actually walking before I went to bed at night, at some points in my life, that like a 10-minute, 5 to 10 minute walk has really affected my quality of sleep about as much as an extra hour of sleep, for example. But I just had to try out a bunch of things to find the things that most impacted that. And a lot of times there's an interaction effect, right? If I had that walk, but I didn't, but I ate a lot right before bed, that would kind of cancel out some of the quality of sleep I get. So like I have to do both things, and then you probably get the hours benefit, right? And so there's some experimentation, but start with just one habit, start with something small, 5 minutes, and then build it up. I find for most habits that I have, especially around health, that just building it up to 10 to 15 minutes a day usually is enough for me to have a sizable all day long impact. And if my 10 to 15 minute habit is not doing that, then it's not the right habit. And it's likely one I'm going to drop eventually because it's not very rewarding. And again, if you've had a problem in the past, it's probably not you. It's the habit. It's not rewarding enough. So experiment, try different things, give it. I mean, some habits I think that'll have a big impact. Even in 3 days, you'll notice it. For me, that's like Wim Hof breathing, for example, impacts my alertness. It's not exactly an exercise. It's, I guess, breathing exercise. I didn't include it there, but like that's one thing where like 3 days of Wim Hof and my afternoon slump 6 hours later is noticeably less. It's and it has, big impacts on my allergies, etc., waking up quickly in the morning. So you absolutely can find the habits here that will have an outsized impact, even in just like 10 to 15 minutes a day, and then it'll make the whole rest of your day better. Then those habits are easy to keep because if you drop them for a day, you see the difference like that day, and you miss the habit and want to do it the next day. So they're easy to pick back up and they become more sticky in that way. And I say this as someone who has a number of habits, and I am by nature a more creative, novelty-oriented person who does not like routine, but has really discovered habits that work for me so well that I can keep them even though I'm not a routine-oriented person by nature. All right, I would love to answer any of your questions about my routines or things that do or do not work for me, or places you can go to learn more about sleep or exercise. If you have any questions, comment down below. Please like and subscribe to get more videos, and check out my other series. I have released videos before this, and I'll release a few more videos later in the series about becoming more resilient in each area of your life so that you can handle the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. Until next week, make big changes one small habit at a time.